Good evening, and welcome to Mechanics of the Fourth Wall. Joining myself and Antonio Subirats tonight is David Weiss of Deep Inside the Rabbit Hole. How are you doing, David?
No, I'm doing all right, man. How are you?
Not too bad. Not too bad at all. And how are you, Antonio?
I'm good. All's good with me.
Excellent.
Yes.
Well, in case you haven't figured out, the show tonight is about cognitive dissonance. And David is most definitely the most appropriate guest to talk about this, given that he's had a fantastic show last night. And how long ago was Race Wars?
How long ago was that? It was that was maybe a month ago or a little less.
So two really, really pinnacle shows, because on the one hand, people could say, oh, it's frustrating, you're talking to people who just don't get it. But to me, it was fantastic, because you're talking to normal people who just don't get it. And that's brilliant, because it shows you average Joe what a conversation about flat Earth might be like. Yeah, they all know it's live. Yeah, they all know there's mics everywhere. But that doesn't change the fact that most of them haven't given that much consideration to it. And the people on last night's show have had to give consideration to it, much to their frustration, because you've been talking about it. Simple as that. It's important to you, as you phrased it.
Well, the show from the other night was spawned by my host from I do a podcast with two other guys, Tim and Mike, and Mike is very trollish, we'll say. You know, he doesn't believe anything, and he makes a lot of posts that really would anger the normal person. But I said, hey, if you're going to be saying all this stuff, we need to do a Google Hangout and go over the facts and let the pieces fall where they fall. And man, did they fall.
Yeah, I mean, it was summed up with the title of the show, Cognitive Dissonance, because it's, maybe Antonio will go on about the general steps that people will go through when they come across something that disagrees with their standard belief system or the program belief system. So you start off with it being fiercely opposed.
No, ridicule. The first stage
ridicule.
is ridicule. Yeah, first stage is ridicule. Then violent opposition. And then depression. They say that it's wild health acceptance, but really it's depression, especially somebody that's really been challenging it. They're defeated and they accept it.
I've been trying to get Mike past ridicule for 2 years now, and it's been very difficult. He has come across, on something like 9/11, where he says, he still believes planes hit. He still believes it was done by terrorists, but the government took advantage of it. I mean, that's as far as I've gotten.
Yeah. So
didn't he say he believed in the controlled demolition part of it, or would entertain that?
He entertains that there could have been controlled demolition involved, but that's as far as I've gotten with him. I was hoping for more out of the show the other night. I was hoping that he would look at the evidence, but he refuses. So it's difficult.
So from his point of view, it was just lucky for the government.
You know what? His point of view changes. He doesn't believe. He believes mostly the official story, and there's other parts. And he always accuses me of not knowing what he believes, and that's because it's always changing. On 9/11, when we started Deep Inside the Rabbit Hole podcast, the first show was about 9/11. It was called 9/11 is Dave's Baby, is what the name of the show was. And I schooled him on 9/11, and it was shocking to him, and he believed totally in the official story. He's come a long way since then, but if you compare his beliefs to what the evidence shows, he's still got a very long way to go. And I'm not sure why he can't come a little farther.
You summed it up when you said the standard story, because you were starting to tell them about the moon. This was on, I think the show was actually recorded a couple of weeks ago, but you only sent it to me today. But you were talking about the moon falling around the Earth and the Earth falling around the sun. And you started it by saying, this is what you believe. And their answer to that was, I don't believe that.
So that's my point. That people defending the ball don't even know what they're defending, and that truly amazes me. I mean, that there's you were the one that put it into words for me that there's 8 billion shills out there defending NASA.
Yeah. Well, it is, and when we think about cognitive dissonance, we've all had cognitive dissonance at one point or another. The actual phenomenon that's happening when cognitive dissonance is happening is the brain. As humans, we function on pattern recognition. So whenever we see a human with a very distorted face, that breaks a pattern, and we have this, but we get that with ideas, with paradigm shifts. So a paradigm shift happens after cognitive dissonance if you enter into cognitive dissonance. But cognitive dissonance is actually the experience of a loss of pattern. So when somebody comes with an idea that really mismatches the patterns that you have, you can't match that idea to any pattern, and this is what causes cognitive dissonance. It's actually a defense priority for the mind, the human mind. So for instance, excuse me, for instance, as a creature on this plane, we're used to grass moving a certain way. We're not used to grass, for instance, moving like this in the wind. We're not used to grass moving like this. So you're walking through a grassy field and you see this, and that breaks your patterning because it turns out it's a tiger. Okay, so this is what cognitive dissonance is for. It's actually a defense mechanism. It's a survival mechanism.
So therefore, you've got adrenaline kicking in, and you've got the typical fight or flight response. So when people just have enough and just want to run away from this information, that's your typical flight response. And when they have the violent opposition, no, I don't believe that, even though you're actually only quoting the standard rhetoric to them, that's the fight response.
Yes, and the lack of pattern is being forced to face something that they've been defending, like David just said, and it not matching. That their ideas not matching with what they've just been faced with, which is in that case the moon falling around the earth and the earth falling around the sun. That's the standard model, and when you make them face it, it kicks in, because in that instance, what they've not experienced before, what they don't have a pattern for, is having something that they believe in, and then being made to face that, not the whole fallingness, but they're being confronted with it. That's a pattern they've not had. So they respond with it, no, and that's what usually happens. The response is no. People say the word no. In fact, when somebody's bereaved, when somebody passes away, when a horrible accident happens and people hear about it, the first thing they say is no. We do this. When a goal gets scored against your team, the response is no. It's always the same thing. It's rejection.
And we all reflect on that sad, somber moment. Are we all sad for the loss of the globe? Oh.
No, the globe is dead. Long live the globe.
People resist change. People like things the way they are. Hey, I'm comfortable. Things are going the way they are. I don't need change, even if it's for the better.
Yeah,
people are happy. I know Mark Sargent uses this example a lot, but in Men in Black, people have got a good bead on things, or would like to think they've got a good bead on things.
Yeah, and as human beings, we've all faced the cognitive dissonance and the having a good bead on things, and then it turning out that bead we've got isn't on the correct target. We've all been through that situation. I think as flat earthers, we're just people that have, that maybe have been through that situation so many times that it's not so jarring to us when we first come across it. There are the small moments when new flat earthers, I'm sure most people out there will verify this. There are moments when, as you're getting the flat earth, there'll be small things that pop up in your consciousness, like the motion of the moon, and you'll have this reaction, and eventually, when you figure it all out, it's not, there's nothing to worry about. So it's no longer.
With the ridiculous nature of the heliocentric model becoming more and more evident, do either of you feel that perhaps we're seeing a bit of a shift in terms of the way our attitudes are aimed towards it? And I'll use an example. So on David's show, it was not last night, but the night before, ODD TV was on there, and he was getting very frustrated with the pure ignorance of it wasn't Tim, it was
Mike.
And I felt his pain. You know, it's frustrating when you're trying to explain something that's quite complicated and does take quite a lot of research and time and effort to figure out. For someone to just spout nonsense when they, as you point out earlier, have no real idea what the model that they worship is, or the model that they believe in actually is, and will you know, shriek or shrug at the nonsense being quoted to them, like the moon falling around us, as opposed to what we actually observe, was it whizzing by each night.
Yeah, well, I think the more, sorry, David, I think the more we face people who are displaying the cognitive dissonance, the more we get used to it. So we know that they're going to say rude things. Then we know they're going to do rude things. They're going to make gestures, tones, posturing, all of these things. We become more and more familiar to it. So it's water off a duck's back. But when you haven't actually faced it so many times, you know, at first you react to it, and you know, and this is what we saw with ODD. He reacted to it. I've reacted to it a million times. So
ODD from the beginning, before we even started the show, he was sitting back, like, you know, listening to the talk that was going on, and he's like, what am I getting into here? You know, and I'm all for a couple of good jokes, you know, to insert humor into things, but you know, when you're arguing against a model and you don't even understand the model that you believe in, it's mind-blowing to me. And getting back to your question of you know, the heliocentric model becoming so ridiculous the more we learn about it, it's getting more and more difficult to not laugh at people when they start talking about the heliocentric model.
Yeah. That's the thing that struck me. You got Mike, who's a comedian, and to me, the heliocentric model's got so many opportunities to poke fun and laugh at it, because it's just crazy. Yet you've got this rather complicated, rather farcical situation where you're presenting the massive distance and the tiny little dots that are the Earth and Moon to this guy, and asking if a shadow could be, you know, cast on the Moon with this tiny little dot. And rather than just ripping apart this, you know, rather complicated scientific explanation, he's just started defending it, and you think, well, that's not very funny. You could just, you know, laugh at whatever's being presented to you because it's science and nonsense and who cares or whatever. But he didn't. He defended it vehemently.
I was trying to do an experiment with a softball and a spotlight to shine a curved shadow on a wall, as the farthest wall that I could do down my hallway, and I couldn't even get close to a sharp edge, whether I held it close, farther away. It's impossible. And at that distance, it would be pretty much a straight. It would just be diffused light at that point.
It's a shame Antonio wasn't on the show when ODD was giving his explanation. He said, we see the sun and the moon out at the same time. And Antonio, you do a really good job of explaining the gibbous moon and how you shouldn't be able to see that. It doesn't work in the heliocentric model at all. And it's something that I know you've said it a couple of times, but it's a really nice thing that if it gets more and more of an explanation, you'll get that eureka moment, like I know you've had, David, where you've looked up and gone, oh yeah, it doesn't make sense. It absolutely disproves the globe. I mean, maybe you could give us an explanation. Hopefully it's getting more and more concise each time you do this.
What, me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'll boil it down to this. You can't remove the horizon from your experience because you're a human being and you're on this plane. And if you argue from a point where you've removed yourself from this plane, so you can observe these things, you've removed the horizon. So place yourself back on the plane and look at the position of things, and it doesn't work. You know, the moon would have to be too far behind the spinning globe. It is laughable, David. Like you say, it's getting to the point where the globe is laughable, you know. And although ridicule is not so nice a thing to use, and we've had it used against us so often, it is effective, which is why it's been used. So I've started to just laugh at my friends. Oh, look at you with your magical spinning world. You know, oh, look, it feels solid and unmoving. Must be spinning 1,000 miles an hour. You know, it's just, it's absurd. It is absurd.
It is fun to argue the ball with flat earthers, though. I could see why there's so many people that do it.
Well, we did, didn't we, on the first interview that you did on Flat Earth UK? That was kind of pre-planned, of course. Me fighting the corner for the globe, and it's good fun to do this. Even though I played it totally deadpan, but arguing the toss and then having that constant cycle of coming up against a bit of cognitive dissonance, moving on to the next proof of the globe, coming up against cognitive dissonance, going into the next proof of the globe, ignoring all answers and explanations and research that may have been done, and falling back on your general, vague understanding of how the world actually works.
Yeah, do you know, we actually saw cognitive dissonance going on right then in the chat. People were saying, what the hell, Nathan, has he turned? What? People just not understanding and going through their own, what the hell? So, yeah.
I did a preview for it. I said, look, I'll be playing devil's advocate I assumed for the whole time. I could only keep it up for about 20 minutes. But, people were pretty warm, but they must have tuned in and gone, what the hell's going on? Is this guy advocated or, defected?
You did a preview. You planned it out with me. We even had to retake because we started first and it wasn't broadcasting. And then the second time we did it, I felt like you were serious and it was starting to piss me off.
Well, it was almost like it was rehearsed because we did do a solid 15 minutes and I was glancing down going, 0 watchers, it says it's live, it's probably not live. And we stopped, restarted, and I clicked go again, and it just started. It didn't give any disclaimers. It didn't say tick the box, you understand you're going into it. It didn't say any of that. Just started. So I immediately just started repeating exactly what we'd done, and both of us, like true pros that we are, of course, just immediately started rattling off the same stuff. But to your credit, you didn't want the questions in advance, which I was really impressed, because obviously you kind of want to keep it fresh, or you wanted to keep it fresh, so you had no preparation really for that. But it's because you've probably done it every day since you found out the Earth is flat, with every single person you've talked to about it.
So far, I really haven't gone into a situation where I couldn't come up with an answer, and I don't have answers for everything, and some of them are, I don't know how that works. I don't know what the sun is made of. I don't know what the moon is made of. But there's observations that don't work. Just a simple thing. This is I'm standing on the Earth. I could see the little crescent moon up here, and to light it, the sun would have to be where my head is, back over here. But the sun is down there. It doesn't make any sense, and I look at it. Is that the only lit part of the moon? Because in the heliocentric model, half the moon is always lit. Whether we only see the part that's facing us.
That was a terrible drawing.
I'm a pro at terrible drawings.
You didn't even finish the globe.
That's a sinkhole. Come on, it's a sinkhole.
Yeah. Hey, so sorry, Nathan. With cognitive dissonance, there'll be people in the chat that have broached the subject with friends and relatives, and if you feel that being confronted, the whole energy that happens from a confrontation, if you find it disturbing, don't do it. Just like with 9/11, once you get confrontation, just don't try to persuade people. Let them arrive at it themselves, because with 9/11, that's what happened. I have a friend, we'll call him Glenn, who was convinced that 9/11 was the official story. When I started to explain to him certain things, and how a plane can't bring down a building, it certainly can't bring down a building that it didn't even hit, like Building 7. Slowly he came round, but it wasn't by me explaining stuff to him. I just explained a couple of things and left it, and eventually this Glenn character will come to it. That's what we'll see in the world. More people coming to it, like more people have come to realize that 9/11 was an inside job. It wasn't the government let it happen or used it to their advantage. There was implicit action to coordinate it.
Right. You had a good idea for a T-shirt, which was "Flat Earth is not for you."
Yes. So also that people, if you use psychological ploys like saying the flat Earth is not for you, people will say, "What do you mean? Why not?" Rather than say, "What do you mean flat Earth?" They will say, "What do you mean? It's not for me." And there are lots of different ploys that you can use to circumvent cognitive dissonance, to actually bypass it.
My comments on my videos are rolling in. You know, I had turned off my comments a while ago because I was just getting 100 an hour, and I like responding. I don't like letting comments just go and have the, you know, everybody has different ways they handle comments. So I started leaving them on. Now, as more and more videos come out, I'm getting a lot more, and I try to answer them. And I get a lot of questions, you know, like, hey, you know, and it's a lot of your standard questions, you know, what, you know, how come you don't have the edge, or, you know, seasons don't work on a flat Earth, and that's my favorite because seasons don't work on a ball Earth; they work perfectly on a flat Earth. But basically, I'll answer the question as simple as I can. I'm like, here's a link, you know, this answers it, and now the choice is yours whether you want to take the time and learn the truth, you know, and learn the information. You've asked the question, I've given you a link, and I send them to my webpage. I have a lot of other people's videos, some of mine, on 3 different pages, and I send them the most appropriate page or directly to a video. And I'm like, here's the information. It's up to you whether you want to choose to view it or not. And that seems to be working. You don't get as much pushback.
Yeah, I like to just tell people that I don't do spoon feeding anymore. Just that. And I know it sounds dismissive, but, you know, most of the time when they bring the question up, they're not actually looking for an answer. They're trying to posit some doubt in the mind of other people.
Well, there's that too, but there are a lot of legitimate questions out there. So I'll give them 1 spoonful, and then I'll link them for the rest of the meal. You know, here's the link. I said, you know, all the answers you want are on this page, and like my first Flat Earth page has, the Flat Earth, the Ultimate Litmus Test on it. It has some ODD videos. It's got some full-length videos to bring you in. You know, but that's a 5-hour commitment to get through that page. Then I have another page that has a lot of short videos on it, and then I have a question and answer page, and I try to update it with some of the best videos to answer all of the basic questions.
The problem is that you said to him you were going to send those to him, and from memory he said that he was going to get his interns to have a look at them. Now, could you imagine that conversation when one of them wakes up to the flat Earth? It is. It really is flat. Look at this video.
Yeah, that's. Haven't really got any feedback from that yet. So, the issue is, and I want to. ODD really set the tone. He's very serious. He takes this very serious, and I like that in him. I really respect that. And you know what? I'm a little different. I take it as serious as him. But I like to insert a little humor, because if you get too serious into this conspiracy stuff, you'll drive yourself mad. You know, I'm known as Second Answer Dave, because if you ask me a question, the first answer is going to be a joke to make myself laugh, or you. I can't help it. It just happens, and it's okay. But then I give the real answer.
To what you're saying, I mean, people have meltdowns. It's not just flat Earth, but anything that involves a massive paradigm shift, and we see it. Tiger Dan, and he's got to bring him up, but he's had his moment, and then it gets surrounded in conspiracy because we've got no precedent, we've got no way of gauging whether somebody has come to this massive paradigm shift and then just gone with it for a while, and then had this little complete breakdown, a cognitive breakdown, and you just don't know if Tim would be the same. I mean, he said it himself. He said on your show that he would have to adjust the way he thinks about everything. His dreams would have to change, and it would be a massive paradigm shift in order to just look into flat Earth in any serious way.
It's a lot of work that you have to throw out. I took a lot of astronomy. I spent a lot of time in an observatory, and I have to throw out all of my conclusions, all of them. But my observations fit into the flat Earth model.
Yeah, of course, because it's the real world.
Talk about cognitive dissonance and not wanting to really look at the fact the Tiger Dan situation is the big cognitive dissonance in Nathan. He believes that Tiger Dan had a meltdown, but when in fact he's been tortured, probably murdered at this point, and somebody's using his account.
I was going to say you almost missed out, replaced by an agent who happens to spout Christian rhetoric.
I'm pretty sure it's John LeBon.
John LeBron, he's just got a lot more Christian when he's taken over the account. Maybe I'm just in the midst of cognitive dissonance, and Tiger Dan has been taken over by infiltration and MI5. Maybe.
but going back to what you were saying about using humour to keep from in the UK, we have an expression. I don't know if you have it in the US, called "going under." When somebody goes under, when they go from a stable life to depression or psychosis, or they go under. It's just they can't deal with life anymore. So some people keep from going under by using anger as a motivator. So ODD uses anger, outrage, because the truth is, it is outrageous. All the wars that we have, all the scarcity, all the problems that we have are based on this bullshit spell that's been woven on the world, where all these things are necessary from a military standpoint. It's so once you realize that isn't true, all the things that are used to bolster the current status quo are destroyed, and the people at the top of the current status quo must know. It's not a case that none of them know and it's just YouTubers who know. These guys know. Some of these guys know and are perfectly happy playing along with the system that they benefit from. Now, whether the reason they don't send expeditions across the ice is because they've been ordered not to by some police force, alien civilization across the ice somewhere, or whether it's just they prefer the prestige that they have, we don't know, but it is outrageous. So comedy is a great way to dispel that anger.
This is where I agree with someone like Tiger Dan and his outrage, and that's kind of echoed by Jaron and his way of putting that we could have answers. We're put on the spot all day long by globalists saying, well, how do you prove this? How does that work? And in reality, we could have answers tomorrow, or we'd have the fact that we can't get answers. What's the sun? What's the moon? Like, easy to answer if you've got access to the equipment that the people who lie to us have access to, and certainly you guys in America have been paid through the nose for a very long time for, and they're not giving us answers. They're just peddling. It's El Cid, riding into battle dead. The globe is dead, but they're peddling the same old crap over and over again, and it is outrageous. And you can understand someone like Dan Pratt getting very, very annoyed about this. Why are we paying for this crap to be continued when you could give us answers tomorrow to tag Jaron's, to tag a Jaronism ending onto that?
Yeah. Dan Pratt's attitude, ODD's attitude, I think they're spot on, and I could see how they're getting really pissed off. ODD, I think he lives in Detroit. Does he, or do you know?
I'm not sure.
I think he lives in Detroit, and so if he does, he's seen the spoils of what's going on in this world, the way the government treats us, and the way the way people suffer, and it's upsetting. And I've seen it too. But I live in Fairfield County. Okay, for those of you that don't know what Fairfield County is, it's like Beverly Hills, if you want something you can reference to. And I live in a bubble. And no pun intended, we all live in a bubble. But I say I live in a bubble because I live in Fairfield County. When I go on vacation, I fly over all the crap and I land, in Hawaii or in the Caribbean. And I pop around this beautiful plane we live on, landing in the most beautiful spots. So I'm the first one to admit, that, I don't get firsthand experience, but my research has shown me, what is going on in this world, and I'm angry too, but I don't let that anger eat me up inside. You gotta, I still go kite surfing, and sometimes I ask myself, how could I be kite surfing when all of this crap is going on in the world? But you gotta take care of yourself.
You do, and I used to listen to Alex Jones. I don't listen anymore. From time to time, I've popped back in to have a look, but I end up angry, annoyed, and depressed because you can't fix everything. So with looking at the flat Earth, we don't need to wait for NASA to give us the answers. We know a lot of the answers already. And one of the answers is they're full of shit. So whatever they tell us, we have to take it with a pinch of salt. But we have enough answers. Later, the scientists, when NASA closes shop and things are redressed and balanced, at that point, the true discoveries will happen. There's already been astrophysicists explain that stars seem to not be in the location they were believed to be and be a combination of ranges that we see from the Earth. These things are already published, but then they go on, you know, they're not publicized. They're just published once in the media and then gone. You then have to spend
you published
ages
a TED talk, didn't you, Antonio? I think it was yesterday. You published a TED talk that talked about the changing distances. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, this kind of echoes. I crashed the globalist party with a spaceman and Sizzies and a couple of other people, and I just pointed out that some of the stuff they believe, these science-loving people, are errors, they're mistakes. Now, I wasn't familiar with Rupert Sheldrake then. Otherwise, I would have pointed to him because he is a scientist. But the thing I posted yesterday is just basically a much better explanation of the same thing that I was trying to get through to these guys, that the laws of physics are not fixed, you know, and Rupert Sheldrake explains this specifically with avenues that people can then chase if they want to verify it or not.
I assume that everybody had seen The Science Delusion by Rupert Sheldrake. It was a TED Talk, and it was banned by TED, along with Graham Hancock, who has a lot of research that I don't agree with, but again, his observations translate into a flat Earth scenario, in my book at least.
They do.
And TED Talks, which I used to really love, and there is some good stuff on there, but they're owned by Big Pharma now, and they don't want this information. The talk that Graham did was on ayahuasca, and they don't want people knowing about these amazing, amazing plant medicines.
That in itself is outrageous, because the point of the ayahuasca and DMT and some of the other hallucinogenics is that the healing ability that they have, especially in people with post-traumatic stress disorder, but lots of other mental health conditions out there, these things are gate kept out of the public forum. It's outrageous. But
DMT
we don't have
is one
to
of those
rely.
chemicals that gets released at death. So when you die, you have a natural DMT release. Did you know that?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, almost every plant that you eat has DMT in it, but your stomach has a myo inhibitor. I'm not saying the word right, and it neutralizes it. But when you drink ayahuasca, it has another root mixed in with it that neutralizes that inhibitor, and you get the full experience.
Well, we couldn't walk around eating food and tripping all the time. You know, we fall off cliffs and things.
No,
but the thing is, there is a lot of things in this world that we know are outrageously wrong, but to focus on them, you suffer. It's not a case that, oh, okay, so the saying, see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. I used to think that this was the most arrogant, self-centered, horrible saying for a long time. You know, the three monkeys or the three monks, you know, the gestures. I used to think, what a horrible, insular, nasty way of seeing the world. And just recently, after the Flat Earth, I realized what that saying is doing. It's trying to say, don't see evil in the badness, in the corruption. It's not, you know, there isn't evil involved. It's saying don't see the evil, see the problem, because if you see the evil, then you get angry, and with anger you can't see a solution clearly. Instead, see the problem clearly, and you can think clearly about it. So don't talk about dead babies, Dan Pratt. Don't mention the unfairness of war in terms of evil. Look at the problems, look at the situation clearly. Because the truth is, we might live in a world where there is no evil and there is no good, in which case it's a world where there's love and hate or fear. But to just assume that situations are evil, they corrupt your view of them. So now I understand that saying as something that's really useful. It's cognitive dissonance. I was going through this thing. How can some wise person has said this stupid thing? And it turns out, no, the stupid one was me thinking that that's what was being said.
Does this sort of similar cognitive dissonance relate back to when people call each other shills all the time? So I know I shared a link with you two earlier about Polarization Nation. I know David had seen him before. It's sort of similar thing to Jungle Surfer and Russian vids. And these three are continually calling each other shills. And I know Polarization Nation even said that today, and like I say, I've only just literally started watching his videos. I'm new to him. That Russian vids was implanting more programming into his videos that were exposing predictive programming. Now, to me, this is so sort of far-fetched, it's beyond comprehension, but all three of them believe it about each other so vehemently and continue to release, you know, at least 50% of the time I agree with them, and the other 50% of the time I'm throwing stuff at the screen saying what nonsense. But nonetheless, they're all producing really good material, but they all think each other are shills. I mean, this, to me, needs some explanation because we see it time and time again.
We also see it with David. Sorry, do you want to jump in?
No, I was just thinking the whole shill thing is people are defending, as I said earlier, defending stuff that they don't know, and people, you know, accusing other people of being shills. 99% of the time they're wrong, and that 1% is still in question to me.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it takes one to know one. I think you said a couple of shows back, Antonio. If you are, I know it's usually CIA that's used. We get MI5 here, whatever, you know. But if you were an agent, you would have to. If you're accusing somebody of being an agent, you would have to have at least worked in that arena to know.
Yes, and not only that, but you would never be able to discover that somebody was a shill because it would have a false background inserted into the history. That it's a stupid thing. You wouldn't see their cards if they were shills because they would be trained. They wouldn't leave any markers. The person that's more likely to be a shill is somebody like you, Nathan.
Right,
I'm kidding.
No, but
that's hard to say.
Maybe that's a good example. I don't know. I'm hoping it is a good example.
Yeah,
or you're just joking.
You can't say that you wouldn't be able to see anything because look at the stuff that they do. You know, the false flags that they pull off. They throw out so many clues. They make so many dumb mistakes. Are they mistakes or is this part of the programming?
But the thing,
are they sticking it in our faces? You know, or are they just don't understand? You know, how this branch of humans works, and they're just screwing up. I don't know what the answer is, but they literally put it in our faces for us to find.
Well, let me give an example to the listeners. So with 9/11, there was a guy who worked for some news agency who explained having seen the plane fly in through the door at the Pentagon. And he explained that the wings folded back. And later he had another update where he defended having said those things, saying a lot of people are saying to me, blah, blah, blah. So that guy was a shill, but he's only a shill to people who are outside of the 9/11 was a real box cutters. To those people, he's not a shill. To those people, that guy is speaking sense. Okay, so we are outside. We're a different group. In this outside group, it would have to be somebody from the ball earth saying something that we would see, but we're not going to because it's not going to work. You know, we know the strategies that have been used against other conspiracies. We know basically what, you know, agent provocateurs, the whole range. We're freaking conspiracy theorists. We know these things. So shills can only work on an unsuspecting mind. They're not going to work on a mind that's hyper alert.
Can we come up with a new term for a conspiracy theorist? You know, I say independent researcher. How about somebody that actually just thinks about or looks at, you know, what's
clear
thrown at
thinker.
them?
Clear
Thinker. Sure.
Yeah. Clear thinkers.
Rational thinker. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's the stuff that they throw us that people believe it's laughable. We said that. It's just absolutely laughable.
But here's going back to Nathan, going back to the point about the Russian vids and polarization nation and these battles. We still have globe traits in our minds. We're human beings. We grew up on a spinning globe, so we believed, and we still have people out there with status anxiety, with ownership of ideas, with all of these things which come from the globe programming. So somebody doing something that we're doing will be seen as shilly, because this term shill is being bandied around everywhere. So we don't have to succumb to that. We can understand that we have this term shill. Now that's a psyop that's been dropped in there. We have this term that we use, that we through which we monitor the world. Oh, could this person? If you disentangle yourself from those thoughts, you start to see clearly. So let's be clear thinkers. Let's think about things clearly, and let's look at things like the ownership of words. I was the first flat earther. No, I was. No, I was. These things that happen. It's like, no, you all were in your own way at the same time, and there's no prestige. You see, prestige is another of the globe things. I want the prestige of being acknowledged as the first flat earther. It's like, no, you don't get that prestige. You get the same prestige as everybody else. So with one of these entangled thoughts is this idea that people should have leaders and people should follow leaders, like in the freaking Life of Brian. So you've got Flat Earth Vancouver, BC, saying the big channels should be telling us what to do. And you have Dan Pratt saying the big channels should be... No. That's not how it works. That's the old globe thinking, that you need a huge mobilized mass challenging and resisting. No, just switch off the TV, Dan Pratt. Don't get annoyed by it.
You know what? There's no wrong answer. I don't want to say there's no right answer, because there's people like us that get together and put ourselves out there, and people say, "Oh, you're leaders." No, we're not. We're just willing to take our time and share the information with those that are interested. There's people like Dan Pratt that are saying everybody should do stuff by themselves or whatever, or get new people. Awesome. Need more of that. There's people like Rory Cooper, My Perspective YouTube channel. He doesn't respond to anybody. He doesn't respond to comments. Nobody. I mean, he's very rarely seen, but he puts out phenomenal work. He's watching, he's thinking, and then he puts stuff out. ODD, he's got his attitude. He's really good at putting, bigger length stuff together. His graphics are good. His delivery is good. All of these things together is what's going to do it. None of them by themselves.
Yes, if I've read The Art of War, it's a brilliant read for anybody out there. It's pretty easy to read too. It's almost like bullet points. So if we're going to beat this, if we want to see this as a battle or a war, what we're doing independently, separately, in big groups, in smaller groups, all of that is how it's going to go, how it's going to work. Like you said, David, lots of different people doing lots of different things. If we banded together to a movement, we had a direction. Sorry, Nathan, let me just finish this.
Go on.
So if we bind together as a movement that has a direction, that's the best way for us to get beaten. To have Mavericks doing flat earth on the side of a pier, to have like Carly Sunshine Medrano yesterday on Flat Earth and Other Hot Potatoes. Did you see the leaflets that she was showing? They were really freaking cool. They were really well produced.
The business
That's
cards?
A brilliant idea. Business cards
the
and
actual,
leaflets.
like leaflets, and they were like completely original. She'd done everything that was on them. That was all hers, and they were fantastic. I mean, what I was going to interrupt and say was that kind of dovetails nicely into something about Russian vids and a polarization nation and jungle surfer, which is, although you're saying we shouldn't band together in groups and be mavericks, from a selfish point of view, that would be one of the best hangouts or whatever, best shows you could ever watch if those three were together, just discussing what they know about what they know. And I'm sure all of them would learn something from one another, because they're all different in their own way.
Well, why don't we try to organise that, Nathan?
we can't organise that. I mean, if we can put it out there, but I doubt very much they would pay attention to this show if we said that. They'd
but
probably
my point was, sorry Nathan, my point wasn't we shouldn't be binding together. My point was we shouldn't be expecting people to be leaders. Nobody
shouldn't be led.
Demanding the globe thinking move onto the flat Earth. No, fuck that.
The whole leader thing, I mean, we're barely scratching the surface. Today, there's 119 people in the chat right now. I would say they all know about the flat Earth, okay? We all need to go get other people. You know, Dave, allegedly Dave, 11 million people on that television show he reached.
Yeah.
You know, that should send a wave growing. If 1 out of 100 people scratches their head, you know, we're now getting some momentum.
Yeah, apparently they've been in touch with Mark Sargent to go on the same show, which would be fantastic. You know, the more mainstream stuff that happens. I mean, I asked this question earlier. I'm not sure if we covered it that much, but do you think that we are seeing that shift from people ridiculing us to not the direct opposite, not us ridiculing Globe, but sort of seeing it as kind of the Globe is dead. It's kind of a moot point now.
You know, in a certain faction, yes, but I go outside and I talk to people. They have no idea. I mean, there's so many people that have no idea. I mean, you saw the video that Math Powerland did with Flat Earth Asshole, and I didn't agree with the way they were asking the question, but nobody had any idea that the Earth was flat. They were just talking about the painting or photo.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, like you say, the presentation, it was a shame because he had paint all over his trousers and he's saying which one's a photo or painting. So, and you've got two slightly different images. So it's a little bit, you know, not ideal, but nonetheless, it demonstrated one critical point. Yeah, he did it. No, he went out and did. That was the most important thing. Right. And it showed exactly that. Nobody was there going, well, flat Earth, what? Yeah, I've got a clue about that. I've seen it on the YouTubes. No one had that answer. They were like, well, it could be a photo.
At least he went out and did it. You know, I haven't seen a lot of Dan Pratt videos lately. I think he's saying people go out there and get other people. I have one of my favorite videos that I lead people to when they say why is the Dan Pratt video where he says, why do they hide the globe from us? It's phenomenal.
Why do they hide the flat Earth?
Why do they hide the flat Earth from us? And Dan does a rant, and somebody set it to pictures and images, videos, and it's on my website, Deep Inside the Rabbit Hole, if you want to see it.
I think one of the best ways, like Matt Powerland and who was it, Flat Earth
Asshole.
Yes, Flat Earth Asshole. Questions for anybody out there who's thinking, what could I do, or I want to do something. If you're not already doing something, questions, you know, go to family, go to friends, go to strangers and ask questions. Do you think we're on a spinning globe? And they'll say yes, and then say, why do you think that? And then they will tell you why, and then say, do you think that's real? Do you think that's true?
I did it with my 4-year-old niece, and I said, "What? You know, where do you live?" I live on a globe. Why? Because I've got one in my bedroom.
Yeah. It's like the Plato said they mistake the map for the world. Yeah, it's the same thing. The globe is mistaking the globe for the world. It's like, no, the world is something. It's like CGI. Somebody made a video criticizing one of my videos with CGI, and I've been saying to them, plot it on a freaking globe. You know, so he did this globe. A CGI globe, which is not something that's an actual globe, it's a CGI representation. I took his video, I plotted it on the globe. It doesn't work. It's not pointing how he thinks it's pointing on the CGI globe. All of the angles have been skewed massively. So this is why this guy won't plot it on a globe. And the globe is not the world. It's like confusing the map for the land. No, the map is not the land. The land is the land.
You also see some sort of normal things that people will quote back to you that you can probably cast your mind back maybe 12 months to when you were first getting asked flat Earth questions, or asking them yourself, moreover. And you start quizzing yourself what do the planets do? And again, David Weiss on your show that you sent me today, which was filmed a couple of weeks ago, or recorded a couple of weeks ago, you got questions from the female panel member. Well, what are the planets? You know, are they flat too? And you kind of you suddenly have to regress almost to, well, we just think all that's nonsense. It's just a misrepresentation handed to us by people who control the media. But you can't give such a concise answer when somebody's in that total cognitive dissonance. Doesn't matter what answer you give them, they're going to pull something crazy out of the back of the Discovery Channel brain that they've got.
One thing now I wear, you always see me, I'm always wearing a different shirt. NASA Lies, the International Fake Station. My favorite shirt right now is The World is Flat. And people look at that one and they go, the world is flat? And I'm like, I just look at them, I go, everybody knows that. Google it. I go, you don't know that the earth is flat? And I'm just like disgusted. And, you know, or I'll engage them or I'll just keep going, depending on the situation. And it's amazing. What I'm finding is you can throw flat earth at somebody if you do it right, and they listen, they don't object. They'll listen and they'll be like, wow, that makes sense. Where can I get some more information? And then have a website, have a YouTube channel to send them to. As long as you clearly send them to some place, they're gonna look. And if they take the time and watch one good video, they're gonna watch another, and then it's game over. You've basically given them free crack, and there's no stopping.
Yeah, but just roll on the bags under their eyes when you see them the next time, fortnight later, and they're like, I've had 2 hours sleep a night because of you, you bastard. You've ruined my life.
I was in New York City throwing some, when we recorded Rabbit Hole, and I had some time to kill. And I was putting my flat earth sticky tape around. And I went into a bar, and I was talking to the bartender and a guy at the bar. They're like, what do you mean flat earth? And I schooled them for a few minutes, and they're like, whoa. He goes, I'm going to look into this. He goes, I'm going to be up late tonight. I go, you're going to be up late a bunch of nights. Bring food.
Yeah. Do you know what I said, though, to some of my friends? I said to them, I've discussed it with them. They're still in the globe. I said, when you get it, when you see it and you finally get it, you will laugh your head off, because there's an element of fear to it in these people. I am convinced that in the back of the mind we have a sentinel that monitors the collective unconscious to stop things coming in which will damage the ego and the rest of the rational mind. So they don't want to look at this, because what might come in is the actual truth that you're responsible for your actions, not just your actions but also your thoughts. So they don't want to face that. So I tell them, you will laugh your head off. You'll get it and you'll laugh your head off, because it's true. You remove that element of fear.
So what does this hypothetical, let's call this person Glenda, let's say you present this to Glenda, what's her reaction?
Nothing.
Can we use a different name, not Glenda?
Glenn.
Mary.
Glenn.
Mary. Mary Glenn. Mary Glenn. No, okay, so Glenn, well, they can't say anything to it. There's no response. It's a standalone statement that they're just like, they don't know what to do with it. And that's why I make it, because they don't have to argue it. They don't have to contest it. They don't have to accept it. But it puts a nice frame on it. Because it's true, when I got it, I was rolling around laughing. And it was laughing from nerves and from a cathartic need to express all of my life, thinking there's something deeply freaking wrong, and I can't, what the hell? And finally it's like, oh, that's it. And it's like, and it's a relief. Yeah,
like, back to that Mike guy should be making jokes of this, because you've got Jaron saying that he woke up one day, he'd been looking into flat Earth, contemplating it. And he woke up one day and just started laughing his head off at the idea of a spinning ball, water sticking on it, spinning around the sun and spinning around a black hole. All of the spinning, you think about it, and you just laugh. You just think, God, this is crazy nonsense. How hysterical.
And you think back about the thoughts that you had when you were being taught the model, the questions that you had, which were valid, which were put aside because obviously we're on this earth, and so the questions you've had don't fit. Like, no.
Yeah, I remember really distinctly when I was about 7 years old, holding a bucket full of water and spinning it round because I had an explanation of water sticking to the globe that didn't make any sense, and sort of visualizing it and then putting the bucket down and going, no, I don't get this gravity lark. It don't make no sense to me. But you just put it to the back of your mind and go on with life.
I remember telling a teacher who said that the moon is out the sun is out in the day and the moon is out at night. And I said, the moon is also out in the day sometimes. And she said, no, it isn't. I said, yes, it is. So she said, out. So I leave. This was in Spain. And then that lunchtime, she comes out. You know, we're all playing. And I said, miss. And she said, what? And I pointed at the moon because it was almost a full moon. Now, this was midday. It must have been at Gibbous. But she looked at the moon, and I looked at her like, got ya. So, yeah, I had problems at school.
You know, one of the arguments that was brought up in the show, and a lot of people bring it up about flat Earth and other conspiracies, is that they like this is a psychosis or an issue where you want to feel important. You want to feel like you're the smartest person, and it's you know, you have a disorder. And they blame it on that, but in fact, the opposite is true, because we're the ones that had to lay down everything we've ever known and throw it out and start over again and admit that we were duped, and that's very tough to do. You know, I don't think we're the smartest people going, but we've seen through an illusion. You know, it's like if you don't know there's a problem, you're not going to look for a problem. Everybody thinks they understand the globe. You know, makes perfect sense because this is the way it is. We've been told that, and there's no reason to question it.
And without being idealistic, you can then make your own world. You know, you can then decide, well, you said about going out surfing. Well, the world is kind of what you make it, and if the world isn't as you know it, you start being a bit more inquisitive, and that leads on to experiencing more of life in general. So therefore, life is better on flat Earth. That's a very true statement.
Yeah. It is, and it's not ignoring the suffering of others, but you can do more to assuage the suffering of others by being a conscious human being. You can actually help the whole framework of humanity by being a more conscious human being and helping discoveries be realized by other people.
You had a great example of this, Antonio, with starfish.
Oh, yes. This is in Chicken Soup for the Soul. There's a person walking around, you know, they're mulling over the problems, and they're on the beach, and it's kind of near sunset, and there's somebody down the beach, and they're picking something up and throwing it into the ocean, and the person who's mulling their problems sees that he's walking on starfish. The beach is strewn with millions of starfish, and as he approaches the other person, he sees that the other person is bending down, picking up a starfish, looking at it, and then throwing it into the ocean. Then as the person gets near, they say, "What are you doing?" And the person says, well, I'm throwing starfish back into the ocean. Picks up another one, throws it in, and the person says, but there's millions of them. Well, what's the point? What difference are you going to make? And the person picks up another one, looks at it, throws it into the oceans, and says, made a difference to that one. It's true. You will make a difference just by carrying a happier attitude. You know, we spoke about this before. In traffic, you let somebody into the traffic in front of you. When that person, you know that person would be stressed if 50 cars don't let them in. So you can be the person that breaks that stress in them, and they join in, and then later on they do it to other people because they've enjoyed that. They're not thinking, oh, that was a nice guy, I want to be a nice guy like him. It's just you've removed the stress from them, and this happens. We know that we function as a flock. Human beings function as a flock or a school of fish in many, many situations. And we can help it just by, in fact, if you look at what the mainstream media would like you to do and think about and do the opposite of that, you're going to have a much bigger impact, which is the reason they want you focused on the things they push in your face. Just do the opposite. You know, if they show you dead babies in Syria, don't freaking look at the TV anymore. Just if most people out there probably don't watch TV anymore, but people like Dan Pratt do, and people that still go to Infowars still get that stress. So don't engage with the stuff that stresses you. Engage with the stuff that doesn't, and you will achieve more good.
Talking of stress, did it stress you doing things like race wars and the chat that you had out yesterday? I kind of know the answer because we spoke straight after it, but
you know, does it stress me? On the surface, it certainly feels that way, but I don't look at any situation as bad. You know, every situation is great. You know, the trolls have inspired me to make my best videos. So I have to thank them. You know, there's a situation going on right now, and another leading flat earther is going to come out with an awesome piece of information, and he only has the person that was trolling them to thank them for the inspiration. So, you know, Mike in that show helped. It did a service. It helped some people that believe in the globe scratch their head, and they're going to look because they don't want to look that dumb. I don't want to say that Mike looked dumb, but it didn't come off well, in my opinion. Maybe I'm the dummy, and I think everybody else is dumb.
No, what I found, David, I think you found the same thing, is usually what happens is they come with this idea of superiority, and when you start pointing to them that they don't quite know the things they're talking about, this is when the cognitive dissonance kicks in, because they've never had to face the situation where their information is nonsense. So with the race wars, when you said to the girl, so how does the atmosphere stay on? Like, you could see the cognitive dissonance kick in.
The atmosphere stays on because of the atmosphere.
Yes.
That was the answer.
Yes. It's like, wow.
So, you know, having these tough conversations helps. It helps everybody. It helps us get better at explaining what we're trying to explain. It helps people that have no idea what's going on to start looking into it. You know, there's really nothing that doesn't have a good side to it. You know, I'll tell a quick, since you told a story about the starfish, I'll tell a quick one about a priest goes to the carnival, you know, at the church, and he puts a ticket into the raffle, and he wins a convertible BMW. And he's like, they're like, oh, and the woman goes, oh my God, you're so lucky. And he goes, perhaps. It was a monk, by the way. He goes, perhaps. But, you know, he lives out in California. He enjoys driving it, and he's driving it along a mountain road, and all of a sudden a car cuts him off, and he tumbles down the hill, and he ends up in the hospital, and he wakes up, you know, he's in the hospital, and the woman goes, oh my God, this was the worst thing ever. And he goes, perhaps. And while he's in the hospital, there was a major rainstorm, and his village where he lived had a mudslide, and everybody died. They're all buried. He's like, oh my God, it's the greatest thing that you were in the hospital. Otherwise, you would be dead. And he's like, perhaps. And so no matter what the situation is, it's you just have to roll with it. You know, my favorite thing to say is, you know, people wake up and they go, oh, it's a gray, rainy day. You know, water falling from the sky, the most precious substance on Earth falling from the sky. That's crazier than flat Earth. I mean, you can't make up stories like that. So whatever the situation is, there's a way to look at it that will benefit you. I mean, and I'm not being like, you know, when you said, hey, you see dead babies on the TV, turn away, don't pay attention to it, that's a little deceptive. You know what? You have to see what's going on, and then you have to take that energy and move it somewhere else to make the world a better place.
Yes, what I'm saying is, when that energy gets you down or makes you angry, then stopping. If somebody kept coming up to you and blowing a klaxon in your face and it was disturbing you, you would stop hanging out with that person. So sometimes that person is actually the television, and that's what it's doing, is blowing a klaxon in your face.
We are regarded as that klaxon. Flat earthers. So on the show that David just did, you've got them saying you're constantly banging on about flat earth. I don't know how they phrased it. That's a very British way of putting it. But yeah, your main priority, because you're obviously interested in it and it does concern you deeply, you want to talk about it. But they feel like it's just a klaxon in the face. Would you agree?
Absolutely. That's the biggest problem I'm having right now, because flat Earth is, you know, the nature of the world, or the lie that's been cast upon us, I feel is the key to our freedom. You know, if you don't know you're a prisoner, you can never free yourself. You'll always be a prisoner. And flat Earth is, understanding it frees you from the system. It sounds crazy, and there's some people out there that think we'll never be free. You know, that there's no hope and there's nothing we can do about it. Well, I don't believe that at all. We are beings of free will, and we just need consciousness to shift there. And consciousness is shifting. Consciousness is rising, and it's happening faster and faster every day. And as soon as people realize that, the faster people realize that, the faster we'll get to the world that we want.
This is the problem. We're shouting in their faces like the klaxon that they hear, and in reality, the globe or the heliocentric model or the spinning ball model, whatever you want to call it, is that prison, like Antonio says. That is the reality, and we can shout it till we're blue in the faces, but people want their prison. They want to be trapped in their existing belief systems, no matter how much we can shrug it off and say, yeah, it's dead. The globe is definitely not where we live. I just want to fall back on it. I was just going to say one thing, which was about ODD, which was when he was pointing out to Mike that you say you don't care, but you're here, you're chatting about it, and we do care. We do take this seriously. We have researched it, and it's just basically belittling people who've actually looked into this. And that frustrated him.
ODD's attitude, he's I don't want to say angry, but he takes this seriously. It's a very serious situation to him, but he doesn't transmute that into anger. He transmutes that into amazing messages. Yeah. Right? You can take that anger and yell at people and stuff, or you can take it and create an amazing video that will enlighten people. Because the anger will never get you there.
Yeah,
the people he's trying to enlighten are ultimately people like Mike who don't necessarily, they just see it as a klaxon in the face. And ODD tried to explain to him that he maybe phrased it badly because he said, well, I know what your programming is, or something like that. Yeah. And he quickly corrected himself and said, we're all programmed this way. And Mike's response was, you don't know my background, you don't know what I've been programmed in. But obviously we have the understanding that globes are absolutely everywhere. They're on every TV set, they're on every magazine front, they're on every billboard. They're talking about them and singing about them on the radio. So we understand that level. So we can make bold statements like ODD did when he says, we understand what your programming is, we've all had it. But to somebody who isn't on the inside, they'll just go, no, you don't know anything about me, you don't know what I've been programmed with. I've not programmed, I've not been sat in a chair, I'm not Alex, I've not had my eyes pinned open. But they have, quite literally, without them even realising it, had their eyes pinned open to the globe in everything they see and hear.
Well, I see it differently. Rather than us being a klaxon, I think the globe is the klaxon. It's continuously. It's like a prison bell.
I totally agree with you, Antonio. I echo that. It's the way we're perceived.
Yeah. Yes. So I know. So we have the globe. Let's consider a prison, and you have the bell that rings for lunch, the bell that rings for all these different things. And instead of it being a bell ringing, is an image of the globe. So you go to the cinema before the picture starts. The globe. Everywhere the globe. It's just a reminder of the prison. So instead of being a klaxon, I see it as this. People live in a prison. They're imprisoned by a spell that tells them they're on a globe. And we're just people saying, psst, there's a way out here. That's all. That's all. There's a way out. And the truth is, it is a way out. It's a way out of the spell. Because it really is a spell. They believe that they're on a spinning globe. And there's nothing that they can themselves do without help from somebody else, or without questioning that spell. But if the spell is woven well enough, they're not going to be able to question it. So they won't see.
Polarization Nation did a really good video on this when he was talking about I think I'm saying this correctly, the Grand Grimoire, and he was just saying it's just a way of putting grammar, and spells are literally what they sound like, just spelling. And it goes to what we've been talking about on this very show for pretty much every show that we've talked about, and the way we talk, the way we conjure images with our words are spells, and spelling is just spells. It's literal, unfortunately.
Yes. So we have to
get that.
Yes, we have to consider that when we're talking to globalists, they are spellbound. It's almost like talking to somebody who's sleepwalking. you can't make sense to somebody who's sleepwalking without waking them up, and you can't dispel the spell that these people have by trying to wake them up, because they are actually awake. They just have this spell. The only thing you can do is create a spell that counters it. So humor is a good one.
The argument that Mike and others in his camp are fighting, they're saying that it's a religious cult that we're in, and we're zealots, and there's no rationalizing with the religious zealot. And it doesn't matter the fact that I discovered the flat earth first, and then I said I don't call myself religious. I just realized it's an intelligent design and there's a creator. I don't want to pigeonhole myself in anywhere. I have some developing understandings, but I did it backwards. I discovered the flat earth, then I discovered the creator, and then I realized NASA was a hoax.
Gets me every time.
Yeah, it makes me laugh when I think about it now. It's just absolutely ridiculous. But the only reason is because I didn't look into it, because I was hypnotized, I was programmed, and I never even considered that they could fake such a thing.
Yeah,
so
they did.
There's some cognitive dissonance for you. Yeah, you're easy.
Well, for sure. I mean, space always seemed wrong to me. I mean, I was a big fan. I used to watch all the stuff, but you always were sort of left, or I was always sort of left with a bitter taste in my mouth, and that kind of just left me looking for more. And the only place to look was NASA and the NASA channel, or Science at NASA, or whatever else they're putting out there. That's where you find your material. And if every time you're left with a bitter taste in your mouth, when you come across, whatever fake Apollo mission material, you go, yeah, that sits quite nicely, and it only takes one person to dissect up the rear projection technology or whatever else, what do they call them, continuity errors that they have on the footage, and you go, well, yeah, it's obviously filmed on a set because it's riddled with continuity errors, and that wouldn't be the case if it actually took place. They say, you get that cognitive dissonance again, where people will say, well, they didn't go for the first one. You just go, what? So they've just faked the first one, and then the rest of them are all legit? What are you about?
You can find so much stuff just by looking at NASA. Like they have the Apollo 11 lander. So you have the lander that they showed with the astronauts in front of and climbing down and all those things. Not actually going in and out of the door because it couldn't quite fit, but you have that lander. Then you had a different model, which is a model they pulled up with a string to detaching the top from the base. They have the one that the astronauts were in front of in one of the NASA exhibition centers. They have one of those. So, okay. So, but they have pictures of the first lunar lander with the rover in the background. So they were just relying on the image not being good enough for people to discern that's the same one that supposedly detached and flew back to the Earth. So you've got Apollo 15 and 16, the lunar lander, the same one as Apollo 1, with the rover in the background. Just look through the photographs, you'll find them. They're there. I mean, we're preaching to the choir, really, but when we're talking to globalists, humor is the best thing. You think you're on a spinning globe? Why would you think that? And then they have to think of why they have to tell you. Well, because... and that's where, whilst they're explaining it to you, they can hear themselves explaining it. And this is the best way, I think, from my experience. Humor.
The channel Lifting the Veil 411, I think, is the name of the channel. A lot of people aren't aware of this guy. He's an amazing researcher, and he just did a couple pieces on the lunar rover, how they unpacked it, and how it's just complete garbage. And you should check out his channel. It's Lift the Veil. And his last two videos are amazing. It's basically they just used an old Jeep from the Vietnam era.
Yeah, it's good. You can see he's got it's basically just a chassis with a couple of modifications. But yeah,
But
it's like,
the whole unloading it's a blow up thing. It's like a balloon, and it's complete. I mean, it's as you look at it and you just have to laugh.
well, didn't
So
SpaceX just send an inflatable attachment for the ISS? That kind of
Correct.
went away very quickly, the explanation about that. But I mentioned this to my globalist friends, and they're like, well, let's see what NASA says about it. I go, okay, have a look. Oh, well, look, it's completely feasible. They say, it's supposed to be in the vacuum of space.
well, that makes perfect sense. It would blow up perfectly. It would stay nice and taut.
Yes.
Don't get me started again, Antonio.
There was
Love
one with
it.
the epic images that they had the lights in Australia on the nicely, beautifully lit so-called time lapse from Epic, and the explanation that they gave for the lights being in the wrong part of Australia was forest fires, and everyone just reads what NASA have to say about it, and they just go, yeah, there was forest fires.
Yeah, in the sense
Does anybody find that you just called it Epic, but the full name is the Epic DSCVR, Epic Deceiver.
Oh,
Deceiver.
I love
It's
it.
the Epic Deceiver.
wow.
Yeah, it's like the
Yeah.
Lucifer telescope.
Right.
Yeah. Wow.
They want us believing in the good, bad. That's what they want. They want you to be believing in God and believing in the devil and good and bad and evil. It's the same in every piece of predictive programming you see. Star Wars is always going to be the best example of this. They're just showing it you so that you believe in it. It doesn't matter if it's sci-fi or at your church. If you've got fire and brimstone in the back of your mind, you're going to be pretty terrified most of the time, and that's a great place for them to keep us in fear.
Mm-hmm.
That's the whole control method. If we're in fear, we're disconnected from our true power, and that's all they want. Because if they do that, they can control us. Because we'll ask them to control us. We'll allow it. But as soon as you wake up and disconnect from the system, it's like the starfish. You made a difference to that one. But as you do it, other people around you will do it. And it is growing. How fast? That's the question. It's accelerating. So hopefully it geometrically progresses.
But it all comes back to oneself every single time. So Dan Pratt, using the second example of the show, so thumbs up to Dan Pratt, so like and subscribe there. But yeah, Dan Pratt was talking about going out and actually picketing the TV stations to stop them broadcasting, because that's what's the ultimate control system. And in a way, I kind of agree with him. It is the ultimate control system. But for a very, very long time, TV was removed from my life for financial reasons. And I think in no small part that helped me to ignore the nonsense because I wasn't being exposed to it. And you said it earlier, Antonio, it's much easier to explain to people that they don't need the TV, they can just turn it off. Because if you actually went and picketed at the TV stations, the people who lost their TV signal would want to know why, and they demand TV back to find out why on the local news. So it's kind of much easier to just say, look, you've got an off button, you don't need TV. And again, Jaron, second example for him as well, but he said, I've got rid of my subscription to cable and haven't looked back. And as a net result, you're more inquisitive, you're finding better use for your time, you're enjoying life more than being glued to the gobble box, being told what's what in both fiction and science fiction and in everything that's presented to you as fact.
Yesterday in the UK, we had, I heard this on the radio. The only time I ever hear the news is on the radio when I'm driving somewhere. The Metropolitan Police had issued a public apology for having a Muslim terrorist drill in the Trafford Centre, which is a huge shopping mall here in the UK, shout, "God is great." They issued an apology for this. I haven't seen it on the news, on the television, because I don't watch, but I would wager that there was no airing of this on the television, because I'm pretty sure what's happening in the UK is the police are saying no to a lot of the things that they're being asked to do. This is just a heads up for the UK people out there. By the way, for all the UK people, we're having a meeting in Oxford on the 11th of June. We're meeting at the Radcliffe Camera, which is a brilliant, beautiful, ancient library, and we're we would be having a picnic, and if the weather turns, we would be going to the Bear Inn, which was built in 1242 when everybody knew that the world was flat. So if you're in the UK, please come along. You know, you'll meet people. You'll be able to really relax and talk about whatever you want to talk about without having people challenge you all the time. And if you're outside the UK and you fancy making it, it's Oxford. It's a beautiful city. So there, I just wanted to say that.
On a different subject, David, was ODD, I don't actually know his name, but was he cool after the show? Did you get back in touch with him? And
So I ended the show and quickly called him. He didn't answer, texted him a little bit. Then I called him and we talked for about 10 minutes, and he was cool. He was he was a little shaken by Mike. But he saw the value in it. He actually watched the show again with his girlfriend afterwards. He was like, where is it? And I was like, it's up. You can just go watch it. And so he wanted to see it again. And I think that show has its importance, has its spot in the mix of what it takes to wake people up. You know, some people will wake up by Stinky Cash's How the Sun Works video. Some people will wake up, they need all of Mark Sargent's clues. Some people will watch 2 of Eric DeBay's 200 Proofs, and they'll be like, okay, the Earth is flat. You know, it just, whatever it is, or one of ODD's, videos, or again, when you search on YouTube Flat Earth, the first one you get is Marty Leeds, the ultimate litmus test. And I love that video. It's a great one. I've watched it half a dozen times.
I mean, of all the YouTubers, though, you're probably the most in contact with, Joe Public, the normal people who, to paraphrase Mike, sort of, I don't care when they've heard it for an hour, will be their sort of answer. It doesn't make any difference to me if it's flat or not. In other words, they kind of have enough of it after a time. I mean, well, are you finding that more and more? Is that always the reaction you get?
I have a lot of access to comedy shows. I was on Sirius Satellite Radio on the Opie and Anthony channel a couple of times, and these guys, they'll ask good questions, but you gotta bang out your answers. 10 seconds, 15 seconds. But you're reaching a lot of people, and I know it's good when the callers start coming in freaking out, and I'm like, okay, people are freaking out. This is good. This is good. I have some opportunity to go on some other shows, which I'm not going to mention right yet. And it's never easy, but it's a lot easier when you're right. Like I would never go on a show to defend the ball because there's too many things that people can say. Antonio has to go pee. He told us not to
promised faithfully that should he scuttle off, you would not mention that he was going off to pee. That's just lovely, David. Thanks for that. Was immortalised on tape forever.
That was fast, Antonio.
Hey, I didn't hear, but I better know what you said. So I was picking up this book, Zero, the biography of a dangerous idea. The figure 0 in maths. When people say, don't care, what difference does it make? This is what I've started telling people. It makes 0 difference. The same difference that 0 had on mathematics. Because it's a bit of it makes people think, and 0 had a huge impact on mathematics. Before 0, all of that was not possible. So, when people say, what difference does it make? Point out, it makes the same difference as 0 made to mathematics, completely different level of existence.
On a personal level, David, because you get asked this all the time. What difference does it make? It won't make any difference to me. What difference does it make to you?
What difference does it make to me?
Yeah, absolutely.
It shows me that we are not insignificant. That we are these very important beings. That we have free will, that there is a creator, that there's so many things, that we live on a world of abundance, and shortage is not a thing, along with that, all of the other stuff that I know about, chemtrails, GMOs, vaccines, all the false flags and stuff, and all the hoaxes. This is just a purpose to keep us uninformed and keep us in a state of fear. We're literally the serfs of this world, and we think we're the kings. Um, it frees you from the control system once you really embrace it and see it. And I'm under the belief, the understanding that nobody can do anything to you if you don't allow it. I was talking with somebody the other day, and they're like, that person pissed me off. I'm like, no, they didn't. You pissed yourself off. You let them piss you off. Their problem is their problem until you make it your problem by getting pissed off.
The world is what you make it. It sounds idealistic, but it's. I'm sure Bob gave a good example of this when he was talking about a guy that was saying he constantly got cut off, and then Bob got in the car with him, or Xanadu 60 from Globebusters, gets in the car with him, and sure enough, people start cutting him off. And he said, well, you're manifesting this reality for yourself. It's life is what you make it.
Right, and what people don't realize, life is literally magical, because that which the energy that you send out, what you want or what you don't want, will come to you. If you send out, oh my God, I don't want this, I don't want that, I don't want that, it's coming to you. You're just manifesting it. So if you can get control of your vibration, not just your thoughts, your feelings. Your feelings are what manifest things in this world. Sounds crazy, but I'm a living example of it. It happens all the time. I mean, I've created things that are just insane in the material world. If you believe all the crap that they taught us in school, some of the thoughts that I've had are ridiculous, but I've manifested them. They work, and now they're in my life.
Yeah, well, you said it about a job, didn't you? You the way you phrased it was, I've got this.
Oh, yeah. I mean, basically, I was told we're not hiring anybody. You have to have 5 years experience in the industry. I had none. I knew nothing. We're not hiring anybody. We only have salesmen in the areas that they be selling, and Connecticut, where I live, doesn't have a program, so we're not hiring anybody. We're actually firing people. And that's it. And I felt, yes, I got this. And I got it. I mean, and that's insane. But it's your feelings will, everybody's had the experience where they saw something or a situation or whatever, and they're like, I'm getting that. Whether it's a physical thing or just a situation, they knew they were going to get it before it happened, and then it happens, and then you get it, right? So you really manifested that with your energy in your life. But, there's people like, well, it doesn't work. I want $1 million. And basically what they're saying is, I don't have $1 million. And that's the energy that they're sending out. It's not just your words. It's your inner belief. If you believe it to be true, it will manifest in your life.
So as it's the subject of this particular show, what about people like Mike who say, I don't want this? Does that mean that they're just going to manifest it more and more? When they say, I don't want to have to dissect up a flat Earth video, that's just going to become abundantly clear to them whether they want it to or not? In other words, the question might be better, is it a fact that once you've taken the blue pill and said, no, I want to stay in the normal globe Earth, that you've been exposed to it anyway and you're just on that path whether you like it or not?
I think what they don't want to manifest is stupidity. This is what happens. I don't want to seem stupid. I don't want to seem stupid. And so they seem stupid all the time. That's, I don't want this. They keep getting that. So when it comes to, and they reject it, they'll respond with, I don't care. So, yeah, you do.
It's
so
like a bad relationship. Like, you're in a bad relationship and you pretend that it's okay, and you stay in the relationship, but it's not okay, and it's not okay, but you pretend it's okay. Okay.
It's familiar. It's what you know.
Yeah, it's not good, and I think that anybody that has a functioning logical brain, and I think Mike does, I know Mike does, that this information is in there. He can't get it out, and he has to willfully ignore it to pretend that he doesn't have to deal with it, and he can do that for a while. Maybe he can do it for his whole life. And that's not just singling him out. Everybody, most people do that, and to some aspect in their life where they pretend that it's okay, that it's not happening. Like I'm going to grow a garden outside, and I'm going to pretend that all the crap from the chemtrails falling out of the sky is not poisoning my garden, and that my vegetables are truly organic. Deep down inside, I know that I'm eating poison.
Hey, get yourself an orgone.
Put it in the garden. Yeah,
yes.
Put it in the garden.
Yeah.
Well, that's okay. I'll do it.
Have any of you seen those photographs from Germany, where people have started making the orgone cannons? I forget what the proper word is. It looks like a cannon. It's a series of 6 rods with minerals at the bottom. They have them in a plant pot. They're about 6 foot, 5 foot tall. They look like a freaking cannon, and they have hose pipes coming out of this bucket. You can put the hose pipe into water, and you'll create rain, or take them out of the water and you'll create clear sky. Somebody took a photograph over Germany where a group of 4 or 5 people had tested these, and it's a panoramic picture, and you've got these circular holes in the clouds, which are chemtrail clouds, that are completely crystal clear. And people are using these in Spain, in the north. They're using this for rain. It works. These things work. It's crazy as it might sound. So
it sounds crazy.
Yeah, so put one in your garden and you won't have any chemtrails there.
Will it stop it from drifting down? The stuff is falling out of the sky.
Yes.
So it'll just stay clear.
It will be like a funnel of clearness. Yeah.
I believe it, but I completely don't believe it until I do it myself.
Yes. So this is Wilhelm Reich. Look into anybody out there. Look into Wilhelm Reich. This guy was killed in prison for what he was showing. And the X-Files, the original TV series, made a special where they had a character playing somebody like him who was a charlatan, called the Rainmaker. This is a true story. Look into it. You'll be fascinated. It's orgone energy. The Scientologists have taken this truth and involved it with their religion because it's true.
I mean, it's one of those where the media has obviously created that spin, and you said the guy been killed. I mean, I don't know anything about it. So.
He was killed in prison, and when there was an inquiry into it, they found the ledger for that day's visitors just ripped out of the ledger, the page.
So, a guy who's discovered something and has importance that could be put onto our lives is ultimately not part of the standard media. Instead, the spin we get tells us of an evil man who's a charlatan, and this happens time and time again. But we get it through our education system to the point where we have people who understand a lot of the crazy anomalies in the heliocentric model and have looked into them and studied them, and then have in days gone by, I would have called it intellectual superiority. They understand how the model works. If you come up against them with something that doesn't seem to make sense, there is actually 99 times out of 100 in the heliocentric model a good explanation for why it doesn't make any sense. You can explain it away with maths or whatever. And when this information is presented or put out there, those people who currently have intellectual superiority take great aversion to the fact that we are saying they're wrong. So you get people like James Panda, who's a very smart guy and understands exactly how the heliocentric model works, understands maths, is clever. But when you basically say, well, we think that your knowledge and understanding is wrong, it knocks them off their perch, knocks them down a level that potentially they could rise considerably above if they just didn't take just what they've read and understood and studied and looked at it with a different hat on, perhaps. So I don't know, a better way of phrasing it. Maybe you can do a better job, Antonio.
Yeah, well, it's just when people have book smarts and they haven't stopped to check to verify whether those book smarts are actually smart or just a misconception or an error, or maybe not kept up to date with new developments, they will face a situation when they come across somebody like us. Well, we will challenge that, and we'll point out, how, astronomers looking at stars at the same time will be looking at a point of convergence rather than parallel lines leading off to light years away in space. The point of convergence is close by. unless they stop and think of this, they won't stumble across it. And astronomers who do stumble across this will very soon stop being astronomers. So with people like James Panda, the book smarts aren't quite so smart. And with this problem where we have people thinking that we think we're superior, and that we think that they're dumb, we were there. We were globalists. We were on a spinning earth, believing it, under the spell. And even if you explain to them that once you arrive at the realization that you were under a spell, that the world is actually static, flat, there's a creator behind it, that we don't know what we are, we don't know what the whole thing is, and that there's no superiority. So we're not superior to them. We're just out of the spell. They're just as important in terms of an experience as we are. Even when you explain this to them, they will turn it. The cognitive dissonance will kick in, and they will say things like, "Well, you're making me feel stupid right now." Or you're
this is exactly what happened with Mike and Odd. So Mike says, well, you're putting yourself in a position of grandiosity, and and Odd just said, well, no, you're just ignorant. And like you say, it's back to them feeling stupid. But what I'm saying is there's a different type of person like James Panda. Have you come across this, David, where you have actually got somebody who really does know how the heliocentric model works, and chances are better than perhaps you do, and they will challenge you, and you're in a position where their on-paper explanation is actually very good. You just haven't had the opportunity to maybe debunk that particular explanation. Have you come across that, or is it always Joe Schmo that you're discussing with?
Let me just jump in. I have debunked that with Jem Panda, and he wouldn't let it go. But I pointed it out, and he wouldn't venture there in his mind. He wouldn't go there. Yeah.
It's back to cognitive dissonance. This is exactly why I bring him up. It's just a different type of cognitive dissonance.
All I did was I said to him, can you tell me where, because he knows a lot about astronomy, I said to him, can you tell me where on the Earth you can look directly away from the center of the Milky Way? Directly away. So if we're on a globe, and some of that globe can look directly towards the center of the Milky Way, there would be an opposite place on that globe where you can look directly away from the center that the other person on the other side of the globe is looking from. And there isn't anywhere, because we're not on a globe. It's not we don't have a hemisphere from the north and a hemisphere from the south of constellations. We have like you said earlier, David, we're like in a bubble where all of the constellations are in a hemisphere, all of them. There's no bottom hemisphere.
That's it. When they show you the star view, they show those two circles, and both have just got a slightly different section of the Milky Way through both of them.
Yeah. So let's see which way you can point away, and they can't, because there isn't a point.
Because the Earth is flat.
Yes.
So have you come across these like really challenging intellectual debates with a heliocentric believer?
I've had some debates with people that pretty much know the official heliocentric model, but it was so easily debunked. The problem is the cognitive dissonance is people are so invested in the globe model that if you show them another explanation, like for the seasons, they can't see it. They're like, no, it's the angle of the sun, and in the northern hemisphere, we're farther in our summer from the sun supposedly, but the angle is a straighter angle, but the angle changes all day long, sunrise to sunset. Instead of 45 degrees, it's 1 or 2 degrees off the horizon. It should be freezing if that angle thing was true. And they argue, well, you don't understand, it's stored up heat, so you still feel it. I'm like, well, how about in the morning when all of a sudden the sun comes up and it's hot? They just refuse to look. And the one I'm dealing with today, it's pretty much just a troll that'll never learn, but I'm doing it for other people to see, is how come you can't see the Polaris in the southern hemisphere? And the answer that I'm trying to explain is that it's low and it's too far away. It's below our sight. And yes, if you had a powerful telescope, I still don't think you could see it because there's too much atmosphere in the way. It's like I swim in a pool that's 100 yards long. The water is crystal clear. But if you go in and look to the far end, you can't see people in the pool underneath the water. But it's crystal clear.
You've got to open your eyes.
Yeah. Hey, I saw a photograph with a P90. I forget who had it on their channel. They're looking 6 miles away and almost 7 miles away on the beach. And when they zoom in, broad daylight, nice clear day. When they zoom in at the pier, they can see the whole of the pier, and they can see the train. They can see all these things, but all of everything that's being seen is through a blue haze. And if you took this blue haze and you took the pier and you moved it further away in this flat realm, this
It
blue
would turn
haze,
into sky.
well, yes, eventually the haze would make the thing no longer visible. The blueness, you know, the pollen, the pollution, whatever it is that's in the environment, it disguises it. It basically like mist, you know, just mist, but further away.
I was videoing when I was down in the Caribbean doing my flat Earth research, you know, with the sacrifices we have to make. I was zooming down the beach about a mile on some people, and they were literally like holograms. They were waving, you know, they were moving, because just from that 1 mile, you know, try that for 30 miles. You're not going to even be able to see in lots of situations. You know, and the argument people say is, you know, if the thing with the boat where you zoom in, you should be able to zoom in on the sun if you're on the top of a mountain. But again, you're looking through so much atmosphere, it gets eclipsed. It doesn't just fade out to nothing. In most situations, it gets eclipsed by layers of blockage. I call it atmospheric blockage.
That's what it is. In fact, you know the Lake Michigan looking at Chicago skyline. The footage, we discussed it last week, David. So you've got that long time lapse, and in the daytime, there are stages where you can see the skyline pretty well. Stages where it's really, really diffused, and then as it gets colder and the atmosphere changes and the pollutants or the elements, the particulate matter in the atmosphere drops due to cold, you can see the skyline quite clearly, and they haven't zoomed in or out at any point. It's just capturing the same thing. It's atmospheric blockage. So when people say, well, why can't we see New York from the UK? Oh, well, because you're looking through a hell of a lot of atmospheric blockage.
You've broken down several of these things on short videos, and I know you keep mentioning the sort of Twitter mentality that people have. Has that been more effective, do you think, boiling it down into 2 or 3 minutes?
Absolutely. I have a short attention span sometimes. So if you can do a 2 or 3 or 5 minute video, you get a lot more views. So, you know, if anybody...
Well, I don't know. I think yours are good. That's more important than anything.
Well,
you know.
it's good, and you know, and gets to the point, and it holds your attention. You know, at least I hope it does. Most people that are listening, you know my videos, but if not, it's DITRH, and I have a playlist called Sunsets. So check that out, or How the Sun Sets on a Flat Earth. Maybe that's it. I think it's called Sunsets.
You generally explaining this stuff using actual footage of the sun. And when you're comparing it to what happens based on perspective, I know you broke it down once where you had a rope strung out by your worktop. So you're giving a model example and you're giving a real-world, actually filmed example. So you're explaining how it works and showing it on small scale. And it works.
And they look identical.
Exactly.
They look identical. And a shout-out to my boy Jeff C. Thank you for inspiring that one.
Woo! Jeff C. Like and subscribe. So, yeah. I mean, this is it. The trolls do push us. I mean, I'm sure the JLB debate will eke out more information. I'm sure he's beavering away as we speak, looking for stuff to debunk what you will come up with, and you are looking for stuff as we speak to prove your point. And that's what it's all about. So, in no small way, JLB is helping. I know you had this conversation with Bob, didn't you, David?
Yeah, you know, he is inspiring us to look into things a little bit more. Not exactly thrilled with the way he's doing it, you know, but that's his way. So it's not my problem. You know, if he's happy with the way he is, good for him. Don't let it affect me. You know, he does ask a lot of good questions, but you know, everybody's got their own style.
He's forcing us to tighten our game. I used to do a lot of Thai boxing when I was younger, and I'd fight with people that were okay. when I fought with people that were very good, that's where I learned. You know, that's
Right.
and luckily for me, it was a gym that had 15 world champions at the time when there were only 18 world champions outside of Thailand. So, booyah.
Here's how your debate should go. You should say, John, do you believe that we live on a spinning ball? He'll say no. End of the show.
Yes, yes, brilliant. That's it. It's all done. It's all figured out now.
But the question is it flat?
Okay, so I think I threw this at you, Antonio. If you get the right answer, you win the following sums of money. You win $1 million if it's a spinning ball. You win $10,000. No, $1,000 if it's flat, or you win $100,000 if it's anything other than those two. Which one are you going to bet?
Huh. Well, it depends if what you want is money. Then.
Well, right now, so whatever it is, I'm just trying to put a balance. Like, you know, you get the most for choosing the least likely.
Mm-hmm.
You get a little bit for choosing flat, and you get, you know, a higher number for any other possibility. And if I knew the answer right now and I could give it to you, which one would you pick? And I think 99% of us would pick flat.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no. Well, do you mean us as in? What do you mean by us?
If it was a real bet. If it was a real bet and the real answer was going to be revealed and somebody was playing it out like that, you know, the odds, you know, John LeBon does these odds video. The odds are, you know, that it's flat. You know, I don't want to say there's a lot of evidence, so I'll say there's a preponderance of evidence.
Would that be a preponderance? Is that the word you said? Was it preponderance?
Yeah, perhaps.
We're just playing a joke on John LeBon. He's not. He'll be listening quietly. That's for sure.
I don't think he's listening.
Oh, he'll be listening, and if not, he'll be listening later.
But we'd all call ourselves flat earthers. So in this particular little loving, I know Mike was like, I hate the echo chamber shows where they're all just saying, slapping each other on. I won't phrase it how he did. It was a lot more rude. But yeah, slapping each other on the back and saying how wonderful flat earth is. He said he detests a show like that. So maybe this type of show where we're discussing concepts and ultimately when it comes to flat earth, we all agree, is that a bad thing because there's no controversy in what we're saying? We are to a certain extent disagreeing on certain topics.
The thing is, sorry, go on.
Good. I was going to say, we don't always agree.
Thanks for the dance.
We come up with concepts. We're all considering them, you know, and we try to disqualify some things. You know, like your thing with the Oregon energy. I want to believe it. It's possible, but I don't believe it yet because it's a little out there for me. But I'm not discrediting it. I'm not ruling it out, and I will eventually try it and observe, and that might be the craziest thing I've done. But the world is a crazy place.
I can tell you this, okay? The way Wilhelm Reich made the discovery that there was this energy which he called orgone. It's just the ether in a different configuration. It's where the ether meets a certain resonance. Was by looking at through microscopes at bacteria and how bacteria have a little bubble of environment around them, and how this bubble of environment, the very edges of this bubble, are blue. This blueness, he just asked the question, what's making it blue? He thought it might be the light from the microscope, so he used different lights, and he came to the conclusion that no, it has this blue quality to it. We've all seen this when we've looked at TV shows like CSI, anything where they look at microscopes and you look at bacteria and whatnot, and they have a bubble of their own environment. This is what colloidal silver destroys, the bubble. But the bubble itself has a color, and the color, this blueness, is what he was looking into. He was looking to see what causes this. That's the actual, when you think of this, and you look at his studies, you see the progressive stages that he went from looking at bacteria to realizing what was causing the blueness. And it's a very good progression. I mean, the guy knew what he was doing. He was actually a doctor treating cancer. And he realized that people who were having sex stage 4 cancer were living much longer than people who were stage 4 cancer not having sex, which is why he linked it to the orgasm and to the replenishing or rebalancing of energies, and that's why he called it orgone. Later, this was smeared with the orgasmatron, with Woody Allen making a film. There was a lot of smearing of his discoveries. I always find it suspicious when the mainstream smears discoveries. So it's good to look into.
David's already cancer negative with all the colloidal silver and all the other things he takes. So sex, you don't need that, David.
Yeah, my medicine cabinet looks like an art supply store.
Yes, it does.
Well, you need to add a few vibrators to that cabinet by the sounds of things.
No. You can just make yourself an orgone generator, which is basically a chamber. Very simple to build. This is what Reich did. He built one in the basement of the hospital where he worked, and the people who were not getting any fun at home, he would sit them in it, and it turned out they were living as long as the people who were going home and having a little bit of fun. So it's something that's true. The orgone is something that's genuinely true. So, and we can test. In fact, in Israel, they had a drought where the Knesset, the Sea of Galilee, which is a freshwater sea, and it feeds the water for Israel and Palestine, had got to a dangerous low level. They hired somebody in who had been working in Nigeria when they had a drought, and this guy made it rain. Now, you can think it's just coincidence, but when a guy goes around and makes it rain wherever he goes continuously all the time and gets hired by countries to bring in equipment with all of the paperwork that entails, and it's a country like freaking Israel that needs the water, there might be something in it. And this guy is one of the people who's going around educating the world about Wilhelm Reich and his discoveries.
It'd be nice if the discoveries were translatable to things above us. You know, you're looking at, would you put bioluminescence with the blue caused by bacteria? It would be bioluminescence, wouldn't it, if it was biological and glowing?
Yes, but it's not caused by bacteria. It's caused by the ether coming into interacting with something. So sure. It can be, tiny vortices of energy, whatever.
Right. I mean, I'm racking my brains because of a conversation I had with Gav earlier, and he'd been moving house, so he essentially said he'd been out for 2 weeks and got the lowdown. I had to sort of boil down what Crow was saying about the waters above and how literal you want to take that is entirely up to you. But now that sort of meme that flat earthers believe there's, in the most literal sense, waters above us, but in reality it's back to us being limited, and the people who should be looking into this and giving us answers, or as Dan Pratt would say, we should be demanding either, well, Dan kind of phrases it that we should expose their bullshit, and I think it's more outrageous that they're presenting us bullshit when they could be giving us answers to these very simplistic questions. And what's above us is a fairly, I would call that a fairly simplistic thing to ask. I mean, I several months ago said, why is the sky blue? And you kind of think, well, as a flat earther, you don't have an answer to that, and that's pretty outrageous.
But neither do the globalists. They don't have an answer. The answer is that the ocean is blue, therefore it reflects up to the sky because so much of the surface is water. When you ask why it's the water blue,
the explanation is the diffraction of the light energy, so it's come in and all of the red beams bounce around and the blue is let through.
Yes, it doesn't actually work. That's just a facile explanation. That only the blue wavelength makes it through. No, it doesn't. It's a lot more. And if it was blue wavelength making it through, then the sun should be slightly green instead of slightly yellow. So it doesn't actually work. It's just an ad hoc thrown in there explanation.
Yeah, nice and explained with cartoons usually.
Yes, that's exactly how they explain it. So the reason it's blue is that it's blue. That's it. Now, what makes it blue is the ether interacting with something. Why does that interaction cause the blue range? Well, that's a good, interesting question. Let's look at that. Let biologists look at that. And interestingly enough, isn't that what Rupert Sheldrake is? He's a biologist, and he's looking at things and questioning things, and getting banned from TED Talks.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. So when you're looking at these things, the chances are that if it's to do with the sky above us, well, that's limited. It's locked down. There's agencies that deal with that, and we're just expected to trust and believe everything that they present us.
Yeah, but the thing is, we don't need to. We don't need to believe anything they say at all. We can just, come to this realization. It's blue. That's all you need to know. If you want to look into it, go and study and learn and develop systems and go for that. If that's
At this
what you
point,
want, but don't expect other people to go and do it.
That's exactly what I was about to say. If there was a globalist on the panel right now, they'd bang their fist and say, well, I've got an explanation. If I just simply accept that I live on a globe, I just accept that explanation, and the blue light waves get let through, and that's fine. That works. That's a good enough explanation. You have nothing. And we don't have a means of getting that explanation. It'd be nice to know. I'd like to know. I still don't have an answer.
Yeah. I think Dave might have an answer.
Rubbish. Maybe Dave's got an answer.
Yes.
I do not have an answer. My thought is, if there is a liquid firmament, it's blue because the same way the ocean's blue. I don't know the answer. I don't know.
Yeah.
Why is a pool blue? When you put what pool, pool's got a white liner, you fill it with water, it's blue.
Mhm. Yeah. Same thing.
Maybe it's reflecting the sky.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's the same as the sky. This is the point. But then you think, well, could it be plasma? Could it be superheated gas up there? It's got to be different. Maybe the whole thing is plasma and the sun is just a reaction in that we see. And, we're told that it's plasma, and you say about reversing what they tell us and believing the complete opposite. Well, maybe if they're telling us that it's a ball of plasma, maybe the whole thing is plasma.
The whole blue sky thing is ridiculous, because this is what my sky looked like this morning, and now it looks like this, and this is almost every day. So, most people don't even know what a blue sky looks like anymore.
Yeah.
No, it's riddled with chemtrails. You watch them put it up and you point it out to people, and they'll just say, no.
No.
Right.
No. That's it. Just no.
Yeah, your mic's got a bit of a problem with it, actually, David. I don't know if you want to unplug it in, plug it in again to me. Yeah. I mean, again, when you had that talk on Spaceman's Chat, Antonio, you were up against 10 seconds of cognitive dissonance with people shuffling their feet. And that was, again, like, Mike should have latched onto stuff like that, the comedy involved in the cogs that have to turn as you start to figure out a part of the model that you're accepting as a belief.
If anybody hasn't seen the video I posted on my channel, which somebody called Dorja, it's a difficult name to remember. Somebody made a video with that section when I crashed the Spaceman's Hangout, and has made a video of it. Go and watch it. It's brilliant. It's really, really good.
Is this the one with the clowns?
Yes. It's just very funny.
David does that with the clown music when he's pointing out stuff that's stupid. He's just got this clown music. I know JLB's used it a couple of times as well. But what is it about that music that draws you to using that on several of your clips? Oh,
your mic.
We've lost
your mic, David.
No, you've muted yourself now. Should we have some elevator music?
There you go.
No, we've still not got you. You're unmuted, but we can't hear you. Oh, it's all gone wrong. Do we panic, or do we talk amongst ourselves?
We're relaxed.
Insert elevator music.
Still no, David.
Maybe drop out of the call and drop back. Yeah, he's done it anyway. Because it's all right when there's someone here, Antonio. I can talk with you when there's a problem with the guest.
Yes,
not suddenly a panic-worthy emergency. We can talk amongst ourselves.
Yeah. Oh, that was a panic-worthy emergency yesterday for Patricia Steer. When it dropped, it just completely dropped just before Carly Sunshine Milano said hello. Like, oh wow, I could just
yeah, brilliant.
That's it, brilliant.
What was the question?
Why is your equipment so poor? I think
yeah, that must be it. Because we live on a ball Earth. That's why nothing works.
Yeah, that's a logical conclusion. Your equipment's terrible. The Earth is flat.
Yeah, there you go.
Don't know. What was it? I was. Oh yeah, the question was, why do you use the clown music What prompted you to use clown music?
I came up with some baller nonsense, and I looked for some royalty-free music. I went to Googled it, found a site. Site's got 500 categories. I don't know what any. I'm like, I don't know. Randomly picked one. Has 150 songs in that category. First song I picked, I'm like, that's funny. Went through like 200 other songs. Nothing was good. And I'm like, okay. And I used that for my first probably 50 videos. It just became a thing.
It's absolutely comical, like we said at the beginning of the show. When you look at the heliocentric model and you realise it's nonsense, you can't help but laugh. Most of it is farcical.
Nathan, sorry. Jed Skeptic Media is in the house. The Scottish guy. What's that?
Oh, right.
What's that? That guy. This is just for you, Jed Skeptic Media.
We might as well give the people watching a bit of an explanation to what Jed Skeptic Media did. So when David held, it wasn't really a hangout, it was just a Skype conversation that Dave recorded. And we knew we were recording, but we were all just having our usual chat amongst ourselves. And because we knew we were being recorded, we had preempted it with text messages on Skype and so on and so forth to hold up products in a suggestive way to make a mockery of the fact that people say we're pushing this and pushing that. So we had Dave, he carried this over into Flat Earth and Other Hot Potatoes ? Show, where he's holding up nuts.com. And unfortunately for Jed Skeptic Media, he fell for it hook, line and sinker and released a video about us saying, here's more product placement.
Right now in the chat he's saying selling product. Selling product.
Selling products.
We have to remember. Sorry. We have to remember when we're selling something to tell, to identify ourselves as the one selling it so we can make some money, because we just don't do that.
Yes. So let me just read from my script. This is just for you, Mr. Jed Skeptic. Oh, it's a packet of tobacco. Oh, it's not a parchment. Ah.
And smoking guns, that's a word from the Surgeon General.
Yes.
Well,
it doesn't.
Somebody, I forget who said it, that they're not, they know the Earth is flat already, but they listen to these shows because other information comes out. We go off and we talk about the different things that we take for health, and a lot of people pick up a lot of good information. I learned about distilled water from learning about flat Earth.
Well, according to this guy, we're talking all New Age stuff, consciousness and that. Like, consciousness is not New Age stuff. It's a real thing in the real world, Yeah. But yeah, we bring up subjects that are interesting to people that are still breaking the norm.
And we have a laugh. So David especially, I just remember this because it was a good couple of months ago now, but you just started using your distilled water in blue bottles, and you got a hold of a miniature blue bottle and a big blue bottle, and your shoulders are jiggling because you can't contain yourself because you've got this gag lined up that you've had lined up for probably the best part of 2 hours of a conversation, just waiting for somebody to slip it into conversation so you can bring it in.
I actually thought of that on the fly. I thought of it on the fly.
Lies.
Whatever. Can't prove it. Can't prove it.
Can't prove it. It's a lie. But yeah, it was the pre-planned thing with what was it you were passing between? It was some cheap ionizer. It was like $2 or something.
Yeah. A USB. It's a USB. Yeah. Sorry, dude. We made a video. I've not uploaded it yet because I think it's just a bit mean of us to take the mickey out of you. But dude, you're a funny guy.
Yeah, we've got to thank you because we got hours of entertainment out of that. We were laughing our heads off. We loved that. I'm sure I shared it as well. I mean, it was just brilliant. Good on you. And it's like, I can't remember who was saying this the other day, but to the people who want to make a debunking video, at least they've made the effort to try and debunk what we're saying, criticise us. I'm all for that. Brilliant. Yes, it's better than you putting a horrible comment and just swearing.
Yes, one of my friends, one of my colleagues, said, well, he's a flat earther, isn't he? And I said, no, actually, he's not. So I queued up the section. He's like, yes, he is. I'm like, no, he isn't. So I queued up the section where he says, now, I'm not a flat earther, but and I cue that, and I just play that over like 7 or 8 times to him, just back to, I'm not a flat earther, but not a flat earther, but just over and over, just to drive the point home that no, this dipshit is a globalist.
Let me mean. He thought we were pushing
Well, come
products, and
on.
that was the point of what we did. So the fact that people fell for that is fair enough. You know, that's what you were going for. So fair enough.
We're joking around, and going back to ODD, he's very serious. I like to bring a little more seriousness back in. You know,
Okay.
Still keep the humor, but you know, no matter what topic we're talking about, you know, if we have passion about it, if it's something that we've learned that can help humanity, it's a good thing. You know, it's good. You know, do for others, and it comes back to you. That's kind of selfish. You know, if you do things for other people, you get it tenfold back. It's true. So is that selfish if I do things for other people?
No, that's
No.
why you get it 10.
But it comes back to Antonio when he was saying about the comments and not wanting to spoon feed people. Well, you do get to a point eventually where you think, you know, you're attacking me and demanding proof of me. Why should I? I still kind of think, well, no, most people are like that. They're conditioned that way. Like ODD said to Mike, you're conditioned that way. And that just gets people's back up even more. That makes them think, how the hell do you know what I've been conditioned with? I know what I've been conditioned with, and it's not that nonsense. The Earth is obviously a globe. And we just know it's dead. And doesn't mean we shouldn't give these proofs to people when they ask and present us with nonsense. That's life. That's what waking people up is about, unfortunately. That's it. We've got to carry on telling them. Maybe if we change our attitude slightly and just see it for the farcical nature, as Dave said when he walked down the street with a T-shirt saying the Earth is flat. Well, of course it is. Didn't you know? Why are you even asking this question? You know, treat it as ridiculous as it is.
And when
The Earth is flat. Look into it.
There is no curve.
When people say it's not flat, it just looks that way, just like, okay, so it looks that way, but you say it's not flat. Why do you think it's not flat? And then they'll kick into the, well, because it's a spinning globe, and blah, blah. Say, why do you believe that? Yeah. I mean, nobody in the right sense would actually think we're spinning. And the way that the whole globe was brought out, and the time that it was brought out, because let's remember, it wasn't hidden by the church or resisted by the church as we've been led to believe. You know, there was this big challenge. No, that wasn't what it was at all. It was pushed by the church after 300 years of murdering people who doubted the church's teachings. Then the church started teaching it, because anybody teaching anything against the church would be killed. That's how it worked back then, especially in Europe. So when people are still under the delusion that it happened despite the church, like, no, if it made its way to education at all, and the church is still there right now in education, let's not forget that, it's because the church is pushing it. So we have to consider that it was pushed on humanity after 300 years of murdering people, especially murdering women. Not just women, though. Let's not just think that witches, you know, all women burnt were witches, and they were burning heretics. Anybody who doubted the teachings of the church. Now comes the church with this ball. Are you going to doubt it? Do you want to find yourself on a stuck to some wood, you know, spending time with Joan of Arc? No, you're going to say, yeah, okay, and that's it. That's how it went.
I was gonna round out the show, but now that you've sort of brought us on to murdering women, I think maybe I'll ask for David's final thoughts before I do round out the show, if that's all right with you, Antonio.
Sure.
Maybe on a happier note.
Final thoughts are, you know, I'll parrot everybody else. Jaron says it, you know, be kind, open your mind, be good to others. Everybody knows that already. But step out of your comfort zone, talk to people, ask questions about Flat Earth, or just send them a link to a web page or a Facebook page and say, hey, check this video out. Don't even say anything else. Check this out. This is amazing. Can you debunk this? You know, can you tell me why this isn't true? Just plant those seeds and they grow. They're like weeds. You can't stop them. And do it, because if we just keep talking among ourselves, which most of us do, it's not going to grow. You got to be Johnny Appleseed. You got to throw the seeds all over.
All right, yeah, Antonio, you got any final thoughts, hopefully, that don't involve murdering women?
I don't like the thought of murdering women. That's why I don't like, well, Never mind. That's why I divorced myself
No, but I just
from
want to
my
leave that
religion.
as your final thing to have said.
Okay, so final thoughts. Yeah, for the truth to be hidden, it takes a lot of effort, and the powers that be do dedicate a lot of effort to keeping truth hidden. You don't need to worry so much. Once you find something that's true, talk about it. If you meet resistance, don't worry about it. Just don't let resistance keep you from speaking truth. That's it.
Well said, Antonio Subirats. And David Weiss, thank you ever so much for joining us on Mechanics of the Fourth Wall. It's been an absolute pleasure having you here.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And as always, thank you to you as well, Antonio.
Yeah, you're welcome. I love doing these. They're great.
Me too. And to all of you who have joined us live, and to everybody who's been chatting away very happily in the chat, it's been wonderful having you here. I've been Nathan Oakley. I'll see you all in the next video.